Pilgrim here, and Terry Hall. Here.
All right, in reviewing the minutes from January 12th, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second the motion.
Dan Enright
Yes.
and Ryan Liston.
Yes. Starting off with the old business, we have Chuck Becker at 7513 West 136th Avenue. Any updates from last meeting?
No, it becomes a budget discussion at this point. We provided our engineer's estimate of probable cost for the project, and then it's a matter of a funding issue at this point.
Just to reiterate, there were some differences in previous funding. And what was really without that being there, and we don't see any projects coming through that can include this project. I don't know if there's going to be, just keep it on the agenda for next time. Mr. Becker, do you have anything you'd like to add? Just state your name and your address, please.
Chuck Becker, 6100 West 136 Place, Cedar Lake. How much was it going to be to fix it? And then
I believe the estimate was around 250,000.
my question is, since the town put that catch basin right next to my driveway back, trying to think when they did that, it was probably
I have no idea.
early 2000s when Jerry Riley was town council. So
Way
that's,
before me.
but they put that catch basin tying into that 6-inch or 6 or 8-inch clay tile that runs directly underneath my house. That connects to the other one that's behind the house. What happened with that tile collapses my foundation in the meantime. That's trying to drain, how many acres is it draining? Okay.
That location is probably 4 or 5.
Just on my road?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a big volume going through there. Because there's two drains that connect, one across the street and the one in my yard. It drains directly underneath the house to the back one. So what happens if, I mean, we've been putting this off since 92. When Bill Malachar was on Public Works, he had to do the dye testing. Which did dye testing, find out where it went. And then he keeps getting kicked the can. Ignoring the problem doesn't fix, doesn't make it go away. And who's going to be liable if that collapses?
I can't speak to that, but I know that this is something that we're trying to tie into a larger project.
Right.
Because this is a big project. Looking at the estimated value of the property and the home itself, is it worth the amount of time, town funding that it's going to take in order to fix this bandage on a bullet hole of how it's been completed in the past? That's the issue that we're having here.
But they always did the cheap route in the past. When they could have tied it into the major project when they did the backside of 136 Place. When they did half the horseshoe.
I can't speak to that as
Right.
well, and I mean,
And last year I was up at town council when they were talking about, putting blacktop. I'm like, now's the perfect time to finish it off. And they went the cheap route again.
Well, that was a tiny project compared to what this will
Right.
be. So that was not even close to the scope of that project. That was purely just to improve the road.
But whenever they ever, I mean, if it doesn't get done, nothing's gonna, they'll never. be
I
able to tie it
can't-
in with anything.
It becomes budgetary. I mean, it's a money thing at this point. And I can't speak to that.
Right. So it's a town council. job.
Right, right now, I asked Jen for a report last month and to see how much money we had in, our funds, and she said we only had like $248,000. And we've got a thing over in Linsway, we got yours. And I talked to Randy about it, and Randy indicated that, we may have to float some, bonds and do this over a long period of time, so I think that's where we stand right now.
I don't know how town council, how patient am I supposed to be? I mean, I've been asking about this since '92. I mean, and every time just gets kicked to the side, and put a Band-Aid on it.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea, the best case scenario would be to tie it into a larger project where it's going to be able to be of something of generous size considering the amount of properties that flow under you, into you. And it's an expensive project, and it's, I mean, if we can tie it into something where of greater size, that's the best route to go. And please don't think that it's trying to push it off or anything. There's just not money in the budget, and in order to create something that really works for you, that's what it's gonna take. And I'm hoping it's not gonna take 30 years to get it done, but this was this is, like you're saying, this has been an ongoing issue, and
Yeah, like I said, it's just very frustrating. Like I said, my patience has been running real thin because I'm tired of being put off, not from you guys, but town council, like the town, basically.
This, Mr. Becker, this is, if it's gonna be part of a larger project, as Ryan was talking about, the funding for that is likely gonna come from this board, not the council. When Randy was mentioning to Bob about floating a bond issue, I think it'd be more likely that it would be a revenue bond based on the revenue stream or source that the stormwater board has, which is the user fee, and what that generates. The cash, Bob's correct, the cash is simply not there to do it as like a cash and carry project at this point. I don't know, Don, if you were involved in the string of emails, but Sue Hayes is doing an overall utility funding analysis for us, Chuck, including stormwater, and she's going to give us a report shortly. I mean, I think maybe yet this week even, to give us an idea of what the stormwater board can afford. That's actually part of a larger sustainability plan that the council's undertaking. But again, this project, if it's going to be done, it's going to be done by this body, not the town council. And it
Well,
may
they got to have town council approval, especially with something this much.
well, the council would have to approve a bond issue. That's correct. But let's say if the storm, again, what did we say this project? Let's say $250,000. If the storm board had the money to pay for it, it can make that decision outside of the town council. It doesn't need council direction to do that. It's what can it afford to do? It's $250,000 for your project. It's 180,000 plus, maybe 200,000 for the Linsway project. There are a number of projects competing for the same pot of money. So it may well come down to a revenue bond by this body as opposed to the town council. That is a possibility, and not to do just yours, but a combination of projects to get them done. The money's just aren't there. I'm not exactly sure. I don't know if anybody knows exactly how much money we generate per month in the way of that.
That question was asked last month by Don. I don't know if we ever got an answer from Jen how much money comes in on a monthly
Yeah,
basis?
I can get that answer for you though, Chuck. I can let you know what that is on a monthly basis. Because it's, I mean, it's a pretty healthy amount of money,
Mhm.
but it's still, there's just a lot of projects competing for those dollars. But again, it'll be funded from this body, not the council. I just don't see the council doing that. It'll be this body.
At one point last year, we had over $1 million in stormwater. And we did so many projects, we just gobbled that up.
But yet you've owned the property since '92.
Since 92. I've been asking the town,
He lived there and now he rents it.
I rented because I can't sell it because it flooded.
Yeah.
I just had to replace the furnace again last year because it got underwater.
Okay.
Three sump pumps can't keep up.
I'm assuming, I don't know this. Don, can you turn the flood layer on? Is that in A zone?
No,
It's not.
not. You
Really?
can see it. No, it's A zone's only related to the lake. It's just a isolated low area. Actually above a high area. In this area, the berm along the lake right there's about 720. He's actually down around 700.
Have
So
you
it comes
had,
up and down.
what I want to say, like flood claims that you've had to file over the years with your insurance
They
carrier?
won't, no, they don't accept it, because they said it's not.
But you've had demonstrated flooding,
Well,
stormwater damages, right?
Yeah, I replaced the furnace 3 times so far.
Okay.
I mean,
Because they keep going underwater.
there are potential grant applications through DNR.
Yeah.
Now that-
AMGP program.
Yeah, the repetitive loss program. And for the longest time that any Lake County municipality wasn't eligible for that unless they had their own
Yeah,
the
the emergency.
emergency action plan, the EAP. And the county had one, which would have actually provided an umbrella for all county municipalities, but it had expired. It has to be renewed every 5 years, I believe. And I believe they just updated theirs last year or the year before. So municipalities should be eligible for that grant money. It's
Yeah,
pretty competitive.
It is. I did that on a couple of homes in Dyer that actually were not in the A zone either. but
Yeah.
They had demonstrated flood, stormwater damage such as yours. And we were able to buy those homes out. And the beauty of that program, Chuck, is that they will not take the flood, how do I want to say this? They won't diminish the value of your property because it's flooding. Like, if you're trying to sell that property, it's gonna be tough to sell it because it's flood. That program forces you to appraise the property as though it has no flooding damages at all, so you get true fair market value for the property. That might be something worth looking
You
into.
can look into
So
it.
they buy the
They
property?
buy it.
They
yeah,
buy it,
They buy it out. Now, the condition is that it has to always in perpetuity remain green
Green
space.
space.
It can never be built on. But you're made whole through true market value of the property. So that's something, I'd be glad to look into that.
Yeah, we've looked at it before. We're never eligible. So yeah, we can look at it again though.
Yeah, that's probably the best
Yeah.
solution for this. I mean, a buyout, I think, is definitely the most cost efficient solution.
I agree.
don't mean to say that coldly, because it's your
No.
property, I don't mean it that way, but.
But it makes sense, like put a, I don't know if you can put a retention pond in there,
Yeah.
swale or,
Yeah, I mean-
holding area right there.
They would at least minimally have to remain open space. So.
Yeah.
And
And you'd be okay with that if we pursue it from that standpoint?
Yeah. I mean, right now,
You have a renter in there now?
I have a renter in there now.
So you've got a basement and
It's a
Yeah.
crawl space.
crawl space.
it's crawl space and a ranch otherwise? Raised
Yeah, it's
ranch?
A-frame. A-frame,
Okay,
yeah,
okay,
it's-
okay.
and it's-
Have you made insurance claims in the past?
No, because they don't accept it.
Yeah, but
It's
have you
some-
tried to?
Yeah.
Yeah, I tried to, and they said I didn't have, the last time she said, you gotta have a little rider for the sump pump thing.
Yeah, for some pump that
Yeah.
failure, yeah.
My only point is I think that sometimes helps support applications if you have repetitive damage claims against your insurance, whether denied or not. It helps support your case better.
But let us look at that. We'll just put a call into DNR, be able to tell us whether.
Yeah, I forget who the grant administrator is down there, but it's a
Well, it used to be
woman.
Mary Moran.
Yeah, I think it's still her.
It's still there.
I believe so.
Yeah. I think so too. Last time I was at the conference, I saw her there. She was still part of that program.
Yeah,
It's
we can
the
reach out.
HMP.
Yeah, there's an RPP and an HMGP. There's a couple of them. One, you have to be in a floodplain, the other one you don't, I believe is what it is. So,
We actually bought out 2 properties side by side in Dyer and made it, and they were fortunate for us, they were next to a park, and so we just increased the green space at the park. But they have to remain green space in perpetuity.
they're what, deed restricted or whatnot too. Yeah.
When was the last time you replaced the furnace?
Just this last summer.
Okay,
So maybe
It
you
was
can
in the
still
spring.
file a claim with your insurance and get a denial, and as Don said, that helps.
we have to prove some repetitive loss. That, I mean, that really helps to prove that. In the case of the one in Dyer, there were 3 separate times that home had 3+ feet of water in it. It was a tri-level, so it had 3+ feet of water in its lower level, and it was not in an A zone.
Mine was only about like a 50, this high, you see the water.
Yeah. Yeah, but if we can make a case for repetitive loss, that really helps with the chances of getting that. And there's no cost to us to do that, as I recall, and
No,
get made whole.
the county having their EAP approved is the key though. Otherwise, you need a local EAP to be eligible. So I'm pretty sure they have an approved one now.
We'll look into that.
Do you have pictures of when water was high like that?
I got pictures of the watermarks and everything else, yeah.
If we, we'll need that if we're able to proceed with a grant
And
application.
then somewhere I got a little videotape where when it rained, it's literally a river.
Yeah.
Pouring into my crawl space fence.
Yeah.
From the outside, and then you guys had the pump truck out that way, trying to pump some of the water out. That was
Okay.
15 years ago.
The 2008 floods probably.
I would think it's just a call down to DNR to actually marries with Homeland Security, I think. But,
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know she was
Mary Moran, she'd be able to tell us whether we're eligible.
I think you're gonna work on it.
I'll call Mary.
Let me do it. All right.
Thank you. Next one is Lynn's Way, Cary Street.
So this one has been discussed over the last week or two, kind of internally. Kind of started laying out a schedule for repairs. Our recommendation was to essentially give residents that have obstructions within the kind of pipe corridor, essentially a 2-month period to remove them. The project will have to be bid because its estimate was over 150,000. So we'll have to bid it to contractors. Our recommendation is that we essentially get everything up to that level of being able to bid it, but holding the bid back, the official bid, until we have a pretty good idea that all the obstructions will be removed. I don't want to get a contractor on the hook and have them hold while we wait for 1 or 2 landowners to remove whatever need removed. I think you're going to have 1 or 2 homeowners as holdouts. You just kind of always do. I think we said we had 9 out of the 16 or something like that had obstructions, whether it be a fence, landscape beds, there's a pool back there, above ground pool. So there's significant obstructions to get through before you can even think about putting the pipe in. We're under the impression now that all the manholes back there are in reusable condition. I think we're fairly certain about that at this point.
Now we're talking Lynn's Way where we gotta replace 860 feet of pipe and there's 6 catch basins.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's pretty much the entire rear yards between 147th Ave and 148th Place. It's a good majority of that western property line.
Above ground pool.
It's close to it, based on where we located it, just in the field, kind of off an offset off the rear property line. It's kind of on the edge of it. Yes. It is. I don't know if you can see it up here or not. It may not be on this picture, but he's the northern property line. So it'd be, there's one right here now.
Yeah.
That's exactly where the turning structure is as well. You can see the turning structure on the map, essentially. right here. And the pool's somewhere out right here.
So, Don, this is, the actual right of way has been staked out.
Well, I mean, it's a really wide easement, so I am confident that the pipe is in the easement. It's a 30-foot easement. So it's a large utility easement back there. The other complicating thing is that there's also utilities back there
Right.
and they're shallow. So we're going to hit them. I mean, not only is the main line at least the telephone back there, but then you have all the service lines that start splitting off to who knows where. That's going to be one of the bigger problems is finding all the service lines, and it's going to be messy. There's just no way around it, because I have a bad feeling that some of these telephone poles are maybe right over the top of the pipe, if not just within its corridor.
Well, how
Sure.
deep is the pipe?
Pipe's pretty deep. Pipe's about from ground to invert 8 to 9 feet. Actually, even deeper than that, 8 to 10 feet
Wow.
in some areas.
What size is it?
It's a 36-inch pipe.
Would it be beneficial to just abandon the pipe?
We can't do that.
You can't.
No, because this pipe actually takes a bunch of offsite flow from the west, and then also has several drain tiles from the western, kind of the Hughesman farm parcel that are tied into it in several locations.
Okay.
So that's
You
really,
said before, we'd have to replace the pipe, and that the pipe in there is not used in today's standards, correct?
no, we do allow HDPE pipes. We try to keep them out of right of ways. In this case, it wasn't in a right of way for, obviously it's on the western property line. They are better nowadays. The only problem with HDPE pipe is how it's installed sometimes. It's a flexible pipe, so you have to backfill it and bed it well, or
You
else
said that
this,
didn't happen with that one.
that's the thought of what happened. They probably didn't backfill it well, and then ran it over with some heavy equipment and it probably cracked. It's probably been cracked since really close to its installation. So I'm actually surprised we haven't seen more sinkholes develop over the years. I mean, it's so bad that you guys can't get your camera in there, right? For that size of a pipe, can't get a camera in this big.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in pretty
I
bad
mean, you
shape.
could look through the pipe, but Brandon said you can't, the camera won't fit because the whole top of the pipe is,
Just bowed and cracked,
yeah, it's cracked in.
Flow north and south or south and north?
south and north. And we've spoken to ADS, which is an HDPE pipe contractor, and there are opportunities what they call to reround it. But this is in such bad shape that it's not even possible. Yeah, it's complete replacement. So it'll be replaced in kind if we can keep those structures. But like I said, we have to get everything out of there before we really can move forward with it. So we've made a recommendation to staff that we start organizing which addresses we need to talk to in residence. And then depending on when we want to do this, give them roughly 2 months to move everything out of the way. Public meeting might be in order for something like this, since it's so many residents, to let them know what's going on. We know 2 of the 16 on that line have been before this board before, so they're aware of it. I'm not aware to what extent the other residents may be with everything going on out there. But
Kind of a crazy idea that occurred to me, Don. We thought about an easement to the adjacent property owner, move the pipe over, increase the size, give them access to that for future development, should they decide to do that. We have a free and clear area of the pipe.
you could, then what do you do with the existing pipe then?
And what's tapped into, you gotta have just some pumps tapped into.
Probably more drain tiles that are tapped into it coming from the west. So we'd intercept those if we did a pipe to the west. That's also where that infamous spike strip extends all the way down from Ledgestone, which is actually owned by Diamond Peak.
Well, that's even, to me, that's even more encouraging.
Well, and this corridor is also, I believe, where the west side sanitary sewers trunk line is going to go through at some point, I believe. Neil's working on that, but I think that's in a similar corridor along that line. So yes, you could do it, but then how do you abandon the HDPE? Too big to flowable fill it. There'd be a lot of flowable fill.
Well, it's a crazy idea.
Yeah, I mean, no, I'm not saying that would certainly get around having to move all the obstructions, but then you're on the hook for new manholes, at least every 400 feet, which you wouldn't have to do in this stance. And then you have to get, you have to get a utility easement from Hughesman. Who, he's a nice guy. He may grant it. He's done,
Just trying to think of the path of least resistance.
yeah,
Increased cost.
Yeah.
yeah, you have a slight increase in cost just because of the manholes you'd have to install.
4,000 a piece for those.
About, you're talking, I mean, you could, depending on what's coming into it, you can get away with 3 manholes, because our max distance is 400 feet. You know, probably one at, well, you probably would need 4, 1 at endpoints and then 2 in the middle to match that. And figure out, you'd have to figure out what would be tributary to it. If you're gonna promise them access for future development, what's he gonna put into it, and does that have capacity for?
Can't just go to 48. and assume that's what it is.
No, because this all, I don't know where this pipe goes. I thought it went east down 147th. I'm not 100% sure. It may actually go up to that ravine that's on Hughesman's parcel already. I'd have to look exactly where it's at.
So the plan is just to take that HDPE pipe out altogether and replace it with.
Just replace it in kind with HDPE. I mean, I don't have anything against HDPE. It's a good application for, you know, a rear yard that doesn't really take a whole lot of loading, but because it goes in quick. It's not necessarily a whole lot cheaper than concrete, but the installation time is way less. Comes in 20-foot sticks generally, you know. RCP comes in 8-foot sticks. Maybe this big of a pipe wouldn't come in 20-foot, but it'd be bigger than 8. So, but no, good thought.
What would be the cost difference with going with concrete compared to?
Concrete is going to be slightly more expensive, but there's not a huge cost difference in material. It's more labor because it takes so much more time. You have more joints because you have shorter sticks. You have, you know, it can just with concrete. So, I mean, I think you'd want speed on this one to get out of people's rear yards as quick as possible. You know, you can save a week. It might be, you know, beneficial for a job like this.
Don,
Yeah.
were the homeowners involved in this right of way already, have we already been in contact with them, all of them?
I do not believe so. It is not. We just kind of kicked off the discussion maybe a week ago.
One of the reasons for that is money. We want to make sure that we're.
Oh, wait a minute, there was a motion made by this board that said that before we proceed with any money, that the homeowners were aware of what needed to be done first, because I made the motion. And that was agreed upon. There was an amendment to the motion that they could, that Don and his company could start looking at how much this is going to cost. But the bottom line is, before we do anything, this board, the recommendation of this board, which was passed, said very specifically, we're not going to go like we did at
with the Cedar
on
Creek.
141st Street, where we jumped through hoops for all the people, and then at the last minute, some of the people said, we don't want this project. We do not want to waste not only this board's time, but the town council's time with trying to find funding for a project when all of the homeowners involved are not on board with it.
And Dan, I think that's the way it's going.
Pardon me?
I think that's the way. I think that's the way, the direction it's going.
Okay, my only question was, you know,
Yeah.
have any of them been?
No, I mean, Jill and I just started exchanging emails probably early last week about, you know, a potential schedule of when we want to do the project and how much time we need to basically discuss with the residents and give them time to move stuff. So I think it's a matter of identifying which residents have obstructions, getting in contact with them. I mean, whether it's a public meeting before we send letters out to let the entire block know, or we just send out letters. That's something we need to kind of discuss with town staff to figure out what direction we want to go. But yeah, I agree. I don't want to move forward and get funding and then it not going anywhere because we have a couple homeowners that don't want to move something.
Well,
But
would
it's,
it be,
it's on an easement, they gotta move it, right?
They do. That's never that easy though. So inevitably you're gonna have one or two that say, you know, I don't have to do anything. So either we're gonna move it for them and charge them, or I don't know. That becomes a policy decision. I agree with you, Bob. That is,
Get the attorney involved.
yeah. And then you turn then we start incurring more fees,
you know. and
Try to
then
do
you're-
it as
you're
easy as
pushing this
possible.
Project, farther and farther and farther down the road. And that's not the intent of the board or the town council. We want to fix the problem, but there's no sense in going ahead with a project when not everybody's on board. So my question would be, would it behoove the board to make a motion to have the town, whoever that may be, have those letters or emails sent by the next meeting?
I don't know if that's necessary, Dan.
Okay,
I mean, I think we're on that. We're kind of going in that direction already. So, kind of, in concurrence with your motion. So I
Okay.
think it's going in that direction, but we're still working on it.
thank you.
Mhm.
Appreciate it.
And I think of having them come here and hear it directly from us instead of.
I'm all for it. I'm 100% for it. I will volunteer to talk to the people myself
I'd
because
like to have them here.
that we went through this stuff and it was such a waste of time, 2 years that we went through with that 141st property. And we got nothing accomplished, nothing. No, there was no, other than, we're gonna do this and this is how much it's gonna cost, but we ended up we might as well not have talked about it at all.
Did a little project in there.
Pardon me?
We did a little project in there.
Okay, okay, but that.
No, I hear what
wasn't-
you're saying.
Okay. I'm sorry. I don't mean to disrupt.
Will there be quality or something so that doesn't happen again, even on
Yes.
YouTube stuff where it's being watched or expected?
Yes, I mean, HDPE pipe's actually allowed by NDOT, even in right of ways. So there are uses for it. It's just a matter of watching it carefully. I mean, most of the contractors we would get that would bid on this, they know what they're doing. I mean, back in the building boom, things were missed, however so. But no, it won't happen again.
I'm not just saying on this project, but
All
even-
projects.
even on new subdivisions going in and stuff.
I mean, new subdivisions we have standards in place for testing flexible pipes, essentially called mandrel testing. So, and we don't see a whole lot of HDPE pipe in subdivisions. We still just see concrete and ductile. So they do have to do mandrel testing for sanitary, which is PVC. So same kind of inspection.
This is all stormwater, right?
It's all stormwater, but yeah, it doesn't matter. Even if the developer used HCP on a development, they would still have to follow the same kind of deflection testing, as we call it. So we have better things instituted both on the town staff level and ours that would not have that happen again.
Okay. 'Cause I just know how,
I mean, it still happens. I mean,
I
even
know.
private development, like I think I said it before, the CVS off on 140, US 41 and 133rd, they have an underground detention system that's HDPE like, and it collapsed. Partially collapsed.
what is the lifespan of what you're talking about?
I mean, if HDPE is properly bedded, especially the newer stuff now, it has, just a longer lifespan as RCP would, in my opinion. Maybe I couldn't tell you
A
the
long
exact,
time.
a long time. Yeah. NDOT wouldn't allow it if it didn't. So, yeah, it's better than it used to be.
Because like what Dan was saying, just that this board has seen a lot of installations
that were done, and then now we're having to go back and fix it.
Yeah, unfortunately, you live from this, kind of live by the sins of your past sometimes, but we try to correct them as best as we can.
Okay.
So when would be the project going to be broken ground as far as the town, as far as what's a project timeline look like for this?
It would likely be in the summer sometime. And we kind of put a very broad schedule. If we got letters out March 1st, give them 2 months, that puts you, beginning of May. If everything's moved, then it's roughly call it a 5-week minimum bid time frame to advertise, to open awards, award it, and then actually get contracts signed. That's minimum 5 weeks. And that pushes you towards, June-ish at the earliest. If we kind of keep with that time frame is what we've been discussing. But it makes more sense to change it in the summer because it's drier than trying to do it, rushing it.
Especially towards the end of summer.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the town this year. Kind of, it's more front loaded with a bunch of our construction projects. So
If we can get a letter drafted before March 1st, I'll personally drop them off at all 16
Okay.
locations.
and I imagine it'll be tailored to each lot, the duplex lot. So if they don't have anything to move, then great. We'll still let them know about the project because we will be in their backyards.
When would someone go out and mark the yards? Because that's what they're.
For utilities?
Yeah, for the utilities, because that's what they're gonna want to see it. They're not gonna be able to move until.
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't mark utilities, until we actually, have a better construction timeframe.
Okay.
We don't necessarily need utilities to bid it out for what we're doing. We're essentially replacing in kind. We know they're there. And a lot of them are service lines, so yeah, it's just gonna have to be worked around,
Okay.
unfortunately.
All right. So February 9th, I don't know who we'd work with the town to get a letter drafted, but
I think Don and Jill are working on something. You said?
Yeah, Joel's on vacation this week, but I mean, I can draft something up, at least a template letter. It's going to be slightly different, I think, for each homeowner. But we can at least identify which homeowners specifically have obstructions. We have it on our plan. We just have to kind of put, unit/lot to what their obstruction is, which is really easy. So, and then, yeah, we can just change the letter, as we need to for each homeowner.
okay.
Then we can hand it over them or certified mailing or however we want to do it.
Probably ought to do it 2 ways. We hand deliver and then us send too, in case somebody says they didn't get your letter.
Yeah, I mean, at least a lot of these, I believe they're all permanent residences. I don't think there's any rentals. So hopefully that should be an easy process.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
When the town is communicating with individual homeowners, does the town usually send it registered mail? Or do they just send it bulk?
Well, it depends.
Depends on the, yeah,
If it's something that like requires some enforcement, let's say like a code enforcement issue, they'll send it registered, so we make sure that they've gotten a copy of it. If it's not something, if it's just informational, like we're talking about here, we would just send it standard mail.
But aren't we talking about code enforcement here of people encroaching on the easement?
Well-
Isn't that against the town
Your
statutes?
approach, yes, it certainly is. If they, depends on what it is, what's in the easement, but certainly a pool shouldn't be in an easement. A garden, for example, can be in an easement. That's not a violation. But if it's a structure that's in the easement, yes, that would be a code issue. So the pool that we were talking about could certainly be like that. But we may also have gardens in there which are permitted. but
Well,
you
they
wanna
can be
make sure-
easily dug up and moved.
Right.
with
So
the-
you wouldn't need a registered or certified mail for that.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you very
And
much.
and even for the, I think there's 2 or 3 landscape beds in there. If they didn't want to move those, that's something we would remove for them. That's essentially part of our common X. But fences are a different animal and sheds, although I don't think there's any sheds back there. I think it's primarily fences. So.
Moving on to update items. 137th and Lowerman.
All right, in your packets, we're tasked to kind of break out estimates for larger projects that include 137th Lowerman, Sherman. So we actually, that plan is done. We submitted it to the town, I think yesterday. So that's kind of weird, huh? They're supposed to distribute it to the street committee. So it's there. So that's kind of where these 2 estimates were broken out from. Noble Oaks, which is a much larger project, I believe it came out to close to 6 million. That's what would include 137th and Lowerman, and essentially connected into a system along Birch Street. My bearings here. So Birch is actually a pretty long street. So this estimate actually includes the entirety of Birch all the way down to Lowerman. So it actually starts also a larger system coming up 139th. This would include roadway improvements, street, curb, full road reconstruction, and then also tie in the 137th and Lowerman kind of ditch system into a storm sewer under Birch and then outletting into Sleepy Hollow. So it seems expensive, but it's actually a lot more road than you think. And it's all storm sewer ranging from 12 to 24 inch. So it's quite extensive. If you even just look at the your pipe lengths, you're roughly almost at 1,500 feet. So it's pretty substantial to tie it into, this one system. Birch Street can be broken out. The majority of Noble Oaks is south of 139th. It's pretty much this entire block down here. It's quite large. It almost extends to, actually highlight this, 138th place all the way down to 142nd Avenue.
Was the total cost 681,700?
Yeah, that's with a 15% contingency. So these plans are up to roughly 20 to 30% completion. So hence the 15% still tacked onto it. Without the contingency, you're a little under 600. But that would, because Birch Street's kind of outside of Noble Oaks, but it would have been the only road in that vicinity that wasn't reconstructed, so it was included in it. I see the wheels turning down.
I'm just thinking.
Okay.
This project right now would be south of the ministries.
Yes.
And then to get back to north to 137th and Lowerman would be this $322,000 cost?
No.
No.
322 is the next item.
Okay.
That's Sherman
okay.
Street. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's just next. I'll
So
get
this
into
is
that after this one.
681 figure that includes going north to grab 100. Okay.
So initially, without 137th Lowerman, Birch Street already had its own system design to go up to the intersection of Birch and 137th. We said extended it around the bend, and it actually is taken around. Actually goes down Lowerman a little bit to drain. There's a twin shared driveway right here that we would need to stub a driveway culvert in, because this is all just a bowl with no outlet. And really your break to head south somewhere in this vicinity, you can see it's like a high point, but this would take it all the way around the bend. There's a ditch line between the roadway and the sidewalk here.
Right.
And then we would essentially extend a Birch Street lateral out to take this, basically the problem sim ditch line that essentially floods over the sidewalk into Mr. Sherminsky's yard. So
Okay.
essentially provides an outlet to that system that doesn't have one now.
So Birch is, the first street
Birch
directly
is,
west of Lowerman.
yeah, Birch is right here.
Okay,
It's kind of the main street in the Cedar Brooks First Edition subdivision
Goes from 137 along.
to Lowerman, parallel Sleepy Hollow right here. So we essentially have two outfalls into Sleepy Hollow there. We'd essentially start the system into Noble Oaks and stub it for when that goes to full construction, and then the Birch system has to actually have its own outlet, kind of right where it tees into Sleepy Hollow there. So it's a pretty substantial project for only a singular road, but it's actually a pretty decently long road.
and that will also alleviate most of the problems in that Noble Oak subdivision.
No,
No,
no, this is separate. Like I said, it's essentially constructing the downstream portion of a system that would service kind of the northern portion around here, 139th, 138th, 139th place. But it will only essentially build the downstream portion of it. So it essentially would stub, basically bulkhead a line here at Lowerman, and it would run up and then dump into Sleepy Hollow. So it would be ready when Noble Oaks went, but Noble Oaks would have its own entire system that would tie into it. So we'd start it, but it wouldn't quite do anything just yet.
okay, thank you.
How are we gonna finance it?
Good question, Bob. There are, I think, a lot of discussions with budgeting that would need to take place for this one.
More financing from.
Well, Noble Oaks, this is a discussion for part of the street committee, but Noble Oaks is large, but it can be split. Just because there's lots of side streets that make sense where we can split systems and, do a north half first, do a south half first or whatnot, but that's probably a discussion for another day. I think you'll get a copy of that plan relatively soon. You can see how it's expensive. It's just a huge neighborhood. It's an absolutely gigantic neighborhood. So that's that one. If you want to move to Sherman, this one's quite a bit smaller. So as we discussed before, Noble Oaks and the Shade subdivision, which is roughly, a combination of that block and then the block that includes Sherman. So there's lots of Shades additions in the town. They're all kind of called letters. This is Shades Edition Plat A. And then the one that includes Sherman is referred to, well, this one's Belin's, just to prove me wrong. And then this is Haley's. But there's about, I don't know, probably 10 to 15 different shades in this town. But we refer to this entire bulk as shades. Sherman has included that. This is the property that is actually on the agenda, or at least was. So these are all essentially dead end roads in a way. Sherman as well. So we can actually, take it out of the major project and we can create a singular project out of it. This one's quite a bit smaller, about half.
This is off 141st.
It's off 141st, just northeast of Wood Cedar Creek entrance at Rockland.
That's where they built a new home in between two roads.
Yes. So the new home just north of the Alltops was essentially built into a hole, but that hole took drainage from the south and essentially stopped drainage. So it's provided an issue. It's not necessarily a structure flooding issue. It's more just residual flooding along its northern property boundary. So we would essentially we would reconstruct Sherman curb and gutter, and it would have its own storm sewer system that would come down Sherman to the south, head west, and there's a low area right here. There's a cross culvert that comes under 141st, and then it heads west to Cedar Creek over here. So essentially we'd be tying onto that system. It's a small system. I think it's all a 12-inch pipe, but it's still 700 feet of pipe. So, that combined with a full reconstruction, curb and gutter, and we'd also need a drainage easement to basically pick up the problem area that's, related to this agenda item. But that would all be part of one system. This one's a little more awkward, I guess, if you want to use the term awkward than Noble Oaks, and the fact that this would be right in the middle of the rest of the subdivision, you'd be doing one road. Whereas at least Birch is kind of a little outside of the subdivision. So perception wise, this one may look a little funny if you did it on its own. But, quite a bit less.
When it crosses 141st, where does it go?
It heads west, so
Creek?
yeah, it heads west to Cedar Creek. There's actually a pike that was constructed as part of Woods of Cedar Creek, and I think it outlets right up here in the corner of its northwest lot, and then it drains over land down. I think it's an 18-inch. So I mean, there's not a whole lot of drainage we're tapping into it per se, area-wise, so it can handle it.
So here's another huge bill of $322,400.
Half from the other one.
Cha-ching, cha-ching.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, it would be easier to do these as larger projects, to lump them into subdivision projects. I think you get a better cost that way. But I mean, your quantities aren't so low that you're going to get absolutely crushed. But I mean, if you bid these as part of a larger subdivision, it's probably 5% less.
So if we do like Chuck, 137th and Wyoming, and then we do this,
Well,
we will be borrowing money, and we will be taking money from the money that we get in on a monthly basis from Stone Board, and we'll be paying that back, which will limit what we could probably do in the future.
yeah, I mean, I think Rick hit it on the head. I think we need to figure out, what debt load you can service based on how much money you're taking in, and that's all going to come from tooth analysis, I think. So, and you really can't bid these projects together because they're entirely different locations.
Yeah.
So they would be singular projects by themselves, most likely. Yeah, because these are all over. I mean, Sherman's relatively close, but it's still several blocks south of Chuck's place. And the other one's on the other side of the lake. So they're big enough to be bid singularly, but always keep in mind if you can put them together as a larger, if you're gonna do all the within area, overall, it's gonna be cheaper in the long run. But you're also spending several $1 million at that point too. So those are the numbers. I bring you the tools. How they get done is a different question.
But still, these projects come down to funding again. No matter how you look at it, our wish list is based strictly on dollars.
And the wish list is always long, so it's always longer than the available
But what
funding.
I'm saying is our income and the stormwater income is not going to pay for this alone.
No, and I think that gets, these larger ticket items are rarely going to pay for, cash in hand.
Well, what I'm getting at
Yeah.
is, the stormwater board, if we start, let's say we give $60,000 a month out of what the revenue is, then that brings us back to, we don't have enough money for Chuck's project, or another project, because we're already 60 grand in the hole, just as an example. And robbing Peter to pay Paul doesn't seem like a good idea to me.
Well, there, as Rick said, we've got to wait till Sue gets an analysis done to see where we can get money from, and, right?
Right. And like Don said, it's how much money you bring in through that stormwater fee will determine how large a bond issue you could afford to support and do the projects that you have on these various lists. So it's gonna, to do it all is gonna take long-term finance. If you cash and carry, you're just not generating enough money to do it on a cash and carry basis and address all of the issues that you have on your plate in front of you. So, but yeah, Sue's analysis will go a long way towards telling us what we can afford to do on both a cash and carry basis and a bonding basis.
Yeah, and that should give us a better idea long term.
Yeah.
How we want to handle some of this stuff. mean, I think the initial intent when the fee was raised a couple of years ago was to have, obviously a general fund and then a larger capital improvement fund. But I think this analysis is gonna go a long ways in figuring out how big those funds are.
We need to put this to a vote.
I would recommend waiting another month and hopefully we have some better budget numbers to make some better informed decisions. Because honestly, I don't know how you would vote on it right now. And I mean, with our plan just coming out too, I don't know when the next street committee meeting is due. It's got to be relatively soon. I mean, this is kind of crossing over with some of their responsibilities as well. So hopefully a lot of the stuff will kind of, all the analysis Sue's doing, hopefully will answer a lot of questions, not only in this board, but other boards.
So we'll table it till the next meeting. Moving down to the last update item is Jacob Beeman, 9208 West 142nd Place.
So Jill and myself met with Mr. Veman 2.5 weeks ago or so. The easement agreement was signed off on by council, and then I believe he also signed it late last week. So as far as I know, the project's a go. I've notified staff that we're basically free to quote it when we want to do it. It will be quoted out to the town's kind of on-call contractor for this type of work. And we'll schedule it as soon as we can. We need to figure out if we want to do it as a spring project. If we can get a week of good weather, we can do it. So we likely will probably bid it in spring, and most of the contractors do that type of work. They're pretty cool about scheduling stuff. So it is a go project. Now I just need to schedule it.
Good. Next to Public Works projects. Any update, Mr. Bosma? Besides
Plowing
snow plowing.
snow.
Yeah.
I know I see Bob all the time. Not at this time.
Any public comments? All right, with nothing else concerning us tonight, I move to adjourn the stormwater board meeting. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good night. Stay warm.